Today's higher level Leaving Cert German paper was accessible to most students, with some parts challenging for the weaker student. The reading comprehensions were quite long and would have been quite demanding in time. The first comprehension was very long, and students did say that it took them longer than normal to complete. The questions were very fair. Students would have understood them. One or two questions required a bit more detail than others. It was about a lady who was 100 years old and who wanted to fly, so the topic was quite interesting. But generally, for most students, very accessible. I would feel some of the vocabulary might have been challenging for the weaker student. The grammatical area was very pleasant in comparison to some years past. Students got to label nouns, which most students would have a lot of practice on and has appeared in many papers before. As predicted, the relative pronoun was due up, something that hadn't come up since 2011, and it was a summary of a paragraph based on the passage, and students would have found it fairly doable. There was no major hard ones there, so I'd be happy enough with that. The second comprehension was very topical, and students would have enjoyed it and would have been of interest to them. So, can one learn to be a pop star? A lot of students would maybe identify this with the X Factor. And again, quite long in content, so they would have had to read a lot to get the answers. The one interesting thing about this was that most questions in this comprehension didn't specify any amount of detail. So students had to give details in each one, nearly 90% of them. So that would have been quite challenging. So students would have to spend more time giving detail there than they would. So if you say give 3 details, you just give your 3 and you can move on. So that they found that a little bit testing. Again, the material was very relevant to them, and there was no general complaints. On the other hand, the written across the board seemed to be a little bit more challenging for all students. There definitely was no scope at all for any student to have regurgitated or given back any rota-based material. The topics are very interesting. Some of them I wouldn't never even think of myself. They ranged from what advice would you give a friend if they told you they were going to be, or how would you react to going to be a pop star? What would you imagine you'd like to be as your own career in the next few years, what's the most important careers, and why would you choose that? So they really didn't give any scope. The second type was like, what are the dreams and wishes of people, of young children in their childhood? So you really had to think on the spot, and as every child in the world, they have a happy childhood, if not why. So you got no scope there to rattle back anything that you would have prepared or rota based. The letter as well had 4 very interesting themes, ranging from how can a German assistant help you learn German in class, all about the football, female football, should men and women play separate sports together, how did you find the World Cup when Germany won last year, summer camps in Ireland. So very varied, ranging into then, who would have thought of it, exchanging clothes online or in different parts of the city or whatever. Would you organise exchange parties, and what do people exchange in Ireland? So really putting you there to think it out. The last part, students might have got misled a bit. Would you like to live abroad? That was fine, but then they were asked, well, how would you react if your best friend went to live abroad and left you at home alone? So I hope they read that carefully. The second one, again, the short essay, again, if students looked at it initially, they might have thought, okay, I can do a lot of this in the Orla. We have a picture sequence called Farmer and Fahrkarten, which would have been kind of on travel, but there was nothing about cycling in that picture sequence, so it was all about cycling. Didn't give much scope, again, very limited in the questions, so they really had to think outside the box. It varied from like, how would you organise a car-free day in Ireland, what do you think of the idea, give 2 suggestions of what you could do to organise that event, to how can one live, which was nice, an active lifestyle, and should sport be a compulsory subject in schools. To the other extreme then was, why do you need, what do you think of having a bicycle friendly city, cities that are bicycle friendly, and how do you go about organising that? So students didn't get much scope to give back rota material, but overall I'd say my students were very, very happy with it. They did find it challenging in parts, and as predicted in the German paper, they had to think on the spot.